welcome to episode 1 of the Bookish Diaries. For our first episode, you're going to learn a little bit about each of us. We're going to take you through what to expect each week of our podcast. We're going to share what got each of us into reading, and then we're going to share our favorite books of 2024. Helen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Helen White. I'm an author. I have my own writing services that I launched this year, which I was super excited about. I also work in events and event planning. Outside of that, I got married in June of 2024. So I was super excited. Became a stepmom. I released my very first book, nonfiction book called Let's Get Nude, a self-help book, and met these beautiful ladies on Instagram, and here we are today. What about you, Megan?
My name is Megan. I love to read. I have an Instagram where I post all of the books that I've read and kind of reviews and highlights of them. I did start my author journey this year with 2 books that I'm working on. One I am working on my own. I won't say the name of it because I don't want to spoil it yet. Actually, I think I already posted it on Instagram. So I could probably just say the name that one I think is going to be. It's tentative. It's going to be titled A Broken Kind of Love. And it'll be like a romance thriller, I think would be the genre for it. And then the next book that I'm working on is one that I'm working on with our lovely Helen that we are co-writing. And that one will be a fantasy, and we are super excited for that. What else am I working on? Now we're doing the podcast. Let's see, personal stuff. This year I adopted, well, I've had them for a couple of years, but the adoption was official this year. My niece and my nephew, I adopted 100%. So that was kind of exciting this year. And I met, just like Helen said, I met both of these lovely ladies, and now we're doing this podcast journey and a bunch of other journeys, and I'm super excited. Kate?
Hi, I'm Kate Black, and I am an editor, like my sweater says. I met both Helen and Megan via making my bookstagram, which my handle is Bitchin' Books, and my editing business is called Bitchin' Books Editorial. I focus a lot on fantasy, but I also love editing romance and sci-fi, basically anything that's nonfiction I can get down with. I enjoy tea, I found out this year, so that was a big move for me.
Yes.
Coffee for tea. I'm an Earl Grey girly, although I always do decaf. I don't really drink caffeine anymore because I'm 87 years old. I have a cat named Crouton, who is the love of my life. She will probably be seen at some point in these videos because she's a little bit obsessed with me. Yeah, I love reading, and when Helen and Megan asked if I wanted to be a part of this podcast, I jumped at the chance because I love both of these amazing ladies, and I love books, and I love talking about books, and I love talking people into reading the books that I love and then getting to see them love the books that I love. It's just awesome. So I'm very excited to be here. Helen, do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about what we can expect for our viewers for this podcast?
Absolutely. What am I covering?
A bit about books.
Oh, okay. So just like the types of books we're covering, or like indie authors and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so Megan's talking about how we're supporting indie authors, and then I'm going to talk about how we're doing our businesses. But I think in the first one you were like, we're going to talk about what we like about books, what we hate about books, what we love to hate about books, and just kind of like that kind of.
Okay, great. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Love you, Megan. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So yes, the books we're talking about. We're going to talk about the good books, the bad books, the in-between books, the books that we absolutely love, the books we absolutely love to hate, the tropes, the everything in between, the little comments that jump out of a book and just get stuck in your head and you can't get rid of it no matter what you do. Or the book you read and you get to the end and realize that you'll read the entire book again just for that one chapter that is worth reading. So we are going to talk about a bit of everything: the fantasy, the romance, the sci-fis, the dystopian, whatever else you can think of, really. If you can think of the genre, we're going to cover it, basically. It's going to be a fun time. It's going to be candid. It's going to be funny. And it's probably going to be jaw-dropping if I know these two ladies. So be sure to tune in because it's going to be pretty awesome. Megan, what kind of authors are we going to see?
So the main thing, we want to, feature authors and do some interviews on here as well. And we really want to focus on indie authors and help support them, help promote their books, help get their, word out there with, maybe why they even went the indie route instead of the traditional route. But we just really want to, highlight them and support them in any way that we can. These indie authors, I think, work so hard, and I feel like they deserve a lot of our help with, everything that they do, because they're self-promoting, and they look for the help from, people. And I just love them. And being on Instagram, that has been, like one of my favorite things, is working with indie authors and doing stuff to help them, as well as loving their books. So not just supporting them just because they're indie authors, but for the love of their books as well. But we really wanted to focus on that. Not that that will be the only authors that I think we will have on here, but that's our main focus, will be the indie authors. Kate?
We're also going to be talking about each of our individual businesses and how they work within the bookish community. So I'll get to share about editing and some stories with that, how I go about editing and working with my clients. Helen is going to share about how she started her writing business and her writing services. And then Megan is going to share what it's like writing 2 books at the same time and getting to be a mom and an author, and just like how that is working with also having a full-time job. And so we're really excited to share some of our like personal business ideas and lives with you all as well. So Helen, will you share with us how you got into reading originally?
I feel like I was really born reading. My mother's a huge reader, and when we lived in England, she would have these huge boxes just full of books, mostly Star Trek. She had every Star Trek book known to man. She was truly obsessed. She had a problem. And when I was little, she worked for the Metropolitan Police Department, so that office was right next to our local library. So whenever I had to go with her or she had to run down for something, I always got to go into the library. And I often got lost in the library. And my mom, the first time I got lost, my mom was frantic and just looking everywhere. And she said she even had a few of the officers from the station come in and start looking. And one of the librarians actually was like, she's right here. It's fine. Everybody's fine. Calm down. And I was just sitting in a pile of books. And I just picked out all these books I thought were pretty. And then I started sitting down and actually reading them. And it just became this hobby. I just loved reading anything I could get my hands on. And then when I was about 5 or 6, my parents decided it was a problem because I started reading those. Do you remember the books, the how-to books or what do you know books? And they'd have a question and give you all these answers and stuff. Well, of course, at the age of 5, your parents don't really want you reading a book that tells you how babies are made. So They didn't know that I had read that book at school. I had taken it from the library and I'd read the whole thing. And my parents were having some kind of dinner party. And I announced to the room that I knew where babies came from. And I started to explain what the diagrams had shown me and what the paragraphs, and I was damn near quoting these paragraphs. And my mother was just like, no. And I got picked up upside down and just carried out the room. And then the next day she was in my principal's office yelling her head off. So small problem with what I could get my hands on, but I'd always been into reading. And then when I was in high school, I would say I got back into reading with the House of Night series, which is written by mother-daughter duo, PC Cast and Kristen Cast. When I found out they were mother-daughter, I thought that was absolutely amazing to be able to not just write one book with your daughter, but write an entire series. And I have the whole series on my shelf. It starts in this corner behind these books, and it finishes right here.
That's awesome.
Right there. So it's about 18 books, I think, 20 books, somewhere there, 20, maybe 21. It's about vampires. It's a very mythological take on vampires. There's a Scottish side to everything. The goddess of night, Nyx, she is a very big focal point. And the biggest theme in the entire series is the fact that love is the most powerful force in the universe. Even if you decide to use it badly, it is still such a powerful driving force. And so I fell in love with the series because of that. And I remember reading the first book, and before my local bookstore closed down, I'd gone back to the bookstore when I finished it, and I picked up the second, third, and fourth book. And then I begged them to make sure that they got the rest of the books in. And every time one came out, they did get it for me. So I was able to collect the series over a few years. But The House of Night is definitely what got me back into not just reading, but truly loving the story and getting absorbed and connecting with characters and falling in love with a completely other world, you know, and just losing yourself in it.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah.
Will you
So
share
definitely
that
House
quote
of
with us
Night.
that you love from it? Will you share the quote from us that you love from it?
Yes, it's from the very first book, and it's the FMC saying a prayer towards the end. And she says, I seek strength, not to be greater than others, but to defeat my greatest adversary, the doubts within myself. It is my favorite quote from the entire series, and I have remembered it for years and years and years. It's just such a powerful quote. I absolutely love it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I recommend it to anybody. I think everybody should read this series.
I wrote it down.
Read it, definitely read it.
Check it out.
Yes, I have the physical books, I have the audio books, and I have the Kindle version books.
Nice. That's awesome.
It is the first series I was like, I need everything. I have to have it. It was so good. If you get it, Megan, tell me. I will reread the entire thing with you.
Okay, I will.
No pressure. No pressure.
No pressure. I don't feel none whatsoever. Just kidding.
What about you? What got you into reading?
So back in 2021, in July of 2021, my sister passed away, and I took in her 2 kids. And so, well, first I'll start. I've always loved reading. But I would always go through like spurts where like I would read for a couple of months and then like a bunch of books for a couple of months, and then I would take like a couple of years off from reading and then start reading again. And that was kind of my cycle before. But like I said, when my sister passed in 2021, and me and my husband took in her 2 kids, and we became parents, and the kids started watching TV all the time, and kids like literally take over everything. And so I kind of started, and then I was trying to process like you know, like when somebody dies and then you take on their kids, it's like extremely difficult to process the death because your focus is completely on something else. But you know, for me, what helped me cope and get through that was I picked up my love of reading again. And I actually just wrote it down. So I started reading again in 2022. And the first book that I read that rekindled everything was actually A Ruin of Roses by K.F. Breen.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm saying her name right. K.F. Breen, A Ruin of Roses. So that was my first one in 2022. And then I read a couple of books, and then that's actually when I started my my love of Savage Lands. If you know me, you've probably seen me recommend or talk about that book a bunch of times. It's by Stacey Marie Brown, and she's probably an author for me because I've read, I think, almost every single one of her books, and I absolutely like love her writing and the style and the dark fantasy that she does. And then she has like a whole collection of intertwined, like they're all connected to the Savage Lands, like at different point, like different like time periods, but like she has this like whole collection of interconnected books, I guess. And then that just kind of continued. So 2012, I think I read 112 books. Or not, I said 2012. 2022, I read 112 books. And then 2023, I read like 305. And then this year I'm at it was 222, but I did read a book today finally. Well, finished a book, and so 223.
Nice.
Anyways, that's pretty much all I do. Kids, sports, and reading, and then
Now
adventures that we go on. Yeah. Kate, what about you?
So I, like both Helen and Megan, grew up with a love of reading. It was always really encouraged for us to read. But I was the only kid in my household who, at one point, my mom took my book away and told me that I had to go outside and play with the other kids. I was like, what? See, I'm like reading this and it's really good and I don't want to. But that didn't really matter. And so I loved reading. Anytime it was time for bed, I was like, sure, bedtime, reading light, here we go.
The flashlight under the blanket.
Yes. And I had it. Okay, this is kind of a gross story. But one year for Christmas, they gave us these reading lights that had like a little ball in them, and you could clip it on the book. But I don't like how it weighs the book down. I feel like it makes it uneven to hold. Mm-hmm. And so I would take the ball part out and I would hold it in my mouth like a little flashlight.
That is awesome.
After I graduated from high school, I became part of this community that kind of looked down on people who didn't read nonfiction. And it was kind of that you were just supposed to read nonfiction. And so I stopped reading altogether because for the most part, nonfiction is really hard for me to get into. I will say Helen's book is incredible. If it's like a, read a thing and then write about it or journal, or this is something that is, I don't know, that you can do once a day and like make your life better. That's different than just, I don't know, sitting down and reading all of a nonfiction book in one sitting. I can't do it. Anyway, once I left that, I was really bored at this new job that I had, which was great. Like I was getting paid to do nothing basically. And so I started checking books out from the library, and I came across Dark Fever by Karen Marie Moning. And that was kind of the first book for me that opened up the fairy, spicy, romantic-y kind of genre. Before that, as a kid and stuff, I would read fantasy, I would read epic fantasy, I read all of the Game of Thrones, but it was all like more intense, epic world building and stuff. And this was the first time I had read something where the main male character was very like savvy and sexy, and I don't know, I was just like, oh my gosh, what is this book? And I would read it while I was at work. As I would rush home, and as soon as I got home, I would read it, and it that really kind of started me reading again as an adult. And since then, I'm not to Megan's numbers. I don't think I'll ever be there, but like in 2022, I think it was at about 100 books. 2023, I was about at 100 books. This year, I'm only at 70, but I did start the editing business, which kind of has taken away from my free reading time, which is totally fine. But yes, it's really hard because there's so many delicious books out there that I want to read. There's just not enough time. But yes, that is kind of how I got into reading. And then I fell in love with this book last November. Didn't have anyone to talk to about it because no one in my family and stuff reads. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to make an Instagram so that way I can talk to someone about it, and made friends, and here we are. Alrighty, so to wrap up this episode, we are each going to share our favorite books of 2024. So, Helen, do you want to kick it off?
Okay, get cozy.
Before we get started, I don't know if it'll come out. I don't know if this will come out. So The Dark Fever, I absolutely love that book too. And I don't know if either of you guys have watched the show Peaky Blinders. It's on Netflix. And there's this guy, Thomas Shelby, in that show. And that's who I think of, because he always wears a coat. And this is, it's not going to come out good on here. I'll have to put a picture.
Me and Thomas, we be like this.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
He is so sexy.
Add this back in, because Cillian Murphy, or Cillian, however you say it, as Baron, oh my gosh.
Like, he would be perfect. And that's who I think of. Like, when I was reading the book and it started describing him, I was like, oh my God, Peaky Blinders. Like,
because whoever, okay, I'm going to show, I have this special edition book. And, oh crap, he's not in this one. But the picture of him that they did for the special editions looks nothing like how he should. He looks so dumb.
The aggression.
Now I'm just going to picture Cillian Murphy, because that is the correct answer.
Yeah. Picture him when you're reading it. If you've seen the show, picture him, because that's
absolutely
immediately, I've watched that show, and that's immediately who I thought of when I was reading it. And I was like, oh my God, this man is sexy.
Yeah, because he's got that like Irish brogue, dark, broody, I'm not going to tell you things you don't need to know, mysterious, disappearing quality.
Yeah.
I know what I'm reading tonight.
I have not read this yet, but you say Peaky Blinders, and I just have this scene come in my head at his wedding where he's talking to the guys and he's just like, no fighting, no fighting, no fucking fighting.
Yes. That's like Aaron telling Mac, stay back, stay home.
Yes, it is actually, yes.
I need to read this book.
You need to read the books, Helen. They're so good. I think you'll like them.
Okay, tell me the name again.
With Kate, what is it, the fourth book? I stopped reading after
the fifth.
The fifth, yes.
Yeah, at the end of the fifth, everything gets wrapped up in a nice little bow, and then for some reason there's 6 more books. I've never been able to get into the 6th book.
No.
Okay.
It's from a different character point of view, and I'm like, I don't need to know about this character. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's the name of the first one?
Dark Fever.
Dark Fever.
Is it on Kindle Unlimited? I hope
it's on Kindle Unlimited, yeah.
Okay, Helen.
Or at least it was when I read it. Let me check. I'll see if
it says it's on Kindle.
Excellent. I expect a full report at the end of next week.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And I will give my report of the games God's Play.
Yes.
I'm going to read that one too.
It's a good book. It's actually on my list for the best books that I read in 2024.
Ooh, what an
And
excellent way
That's
to
right. I got sidetracked. You should. Well, now I'm doing it again, but now you can go into your books.
Since we went into Games Gods Play, that is on my list, written by Abigail, Owen. I don't have a physical copy of the book right now. I do expect it to get here soon, but I do have the audiobook as well. And I just started listening to the audiobook, and I think I'm on chapter 32 in the
We're on the same
audiobook.
chapter.
Really?
I'm like on 31 or 32, yeah.
I'm just so in love with this book, and the audiobook is just as good. And usually when I really like reading a book, the audiobook is kind of hard for me to get into because it doesn't quite do the book justice to me. But this, they coincide really, 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 really well. And I remember when I first saw the book, and there was a line, Abigail Owen released like the first few lines of the book on Instagram. And the very first word, first line is "fuck the gods."
Excellent.
And I was like, give me the book. I loved it. Highly recommend. Maggie, Arnold. She's amazing. I loved this book. Cute and cuddly and warm and fuzzy, and I was here for it. And she actually wrote 3 books that I read this year, and 3 other books that I read this year, but they're not released yet. I was working with her this year, and I got to read these books, and they are just stuck in my head. I can't stop thinking about it. It is such an amazing story. I can't wait for her to release them. Arabella's Awakening by Jessi Pollock. Accidentally found this on Instagram, where I find all of my books now, and I fell in love with this. It's a werewolf book, so I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it, because I feel like with werewolves, vampires, that kind of thing, it's either hit or miss. I don't think there's much in between space. It's either great or it's not. But I thought this was really good. Chapter 1 got me. I was super interested from chapter 1, and it kept my attention straight through. I thought everything flowed really, really well, and I just fell in love. I'm so excited for book 2 that comes out in 2025. Tides of Deception by Caley Robison. I can never remember if it's Robinson or Robison or Robson. Like, it just
Mess it up every time.
There's just so many. This is just so good. I don't have enough words for this book. I absolutely loved it. It really was one of my favorite reads of 2024. I'm currently reading the second one. Don't judge me, you two. I have not gotten much further than last time I spoke to you. But so good. So in love with it. I think the story is just brilliant. And I'm so attached. Medromeda by Wren. Holy cow. This book just lives in my head. It's just there, and I'm so happy for it. It is a retelling of Medusa, and one of my favorite things about this book is at the very bottom of the book cover, it says a myth-inspired myth. And she really does take the myth of Medusa and completely turn it on its head. And she humanizes Medusa in a way that I've never seen before. And I love Greek mythology. So I've read so many different versions of Medusa. So to be able to read one that completely captivated me and made me wish that this was the legend of Medusa, I was just so in love from beginning to end. And I remember that I read a chapter. I can't remember which chapter it was, but I read a chapter and realized why the book is called Medromeda. And I actually messaged Law and I said, is this why this is the name of the book? And she said, I knew you'd get it. I freaked all the way out. It was so good. And Perseus, of course, he's in the book. And the way that she did it is just blows my mind. And I learned that she actually wrote this book on her phone.
That's really
Literally
cool.
on her phone. She just wrote it, just dropping her kids off at their different extracurricular activities, or driving them to and from here or there, waiting for them in parking lots, at practices. She was just typing it out on her phone. There was no like, let me lay out my plan on the dining room table, you know, there was no sticky notes everywhere. She just, and then I just, get the book.
I actually have it.
If you
I just
have
need to
not.
read it.
You need to read the book, okay? Because I need somebody to be as obsessed as I am with me, so that we can be obsessed together.
Alrighty.
And she's writing another book. I don't think it's a follow-up to this. I think it's a different Greek myth, but she's one of those authors, if she writes it, I'm gonna read it, hands down. And then last but not least, Iron Flame. I don't like the face that Megan just made. I don't know if that was agreement or not, and I'm very, very scared to ask. Is that a no? It was not an agreement?
It is not an agreement, though.
Okay, so we're just going to ignore her presence.
I love you, though.
Because we don't welcome negativity in our spaces.
We said we were going to be honest, right?
Yeah, we love to hate.
Okay, well, I take it back. This was a good book. For those of us who know good books. Because Megan is no longer in that category. You are grounded, ma'am. You're on timeout. This was a great book.
In your head, Megan, but I'm fine.
I loved this book. The scene, there's one scene in particular that I was just obsessed with, and it was when Violet was fighting this other chick whose name I just can't remember right now. And I just thought the fighting scene when they were talking to each other on the mat, it was just so well written. And I was so absorbed. And I was actually listening to it, and I was like, wait, nope, stop the audio. And I picked up the book so I could read it. And my husband and my friend were here, and he's like, we're in the middle of entertaining. Can you? No, something important is happening. Leave me alone. And I went and sat in the living room so that I could read these few chapters because I was so engrossed. It was so good. I really enjoyed Iron Flame, but Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, I think, have grasped my attention in a really good way. So I'm completely here for it. Absolutely. Regardless of what Megan's face says.
So I will give it to you with that book that I think that the fight scenes in the military aspect of it, in my opinion, were really well done. My downfall to that is, not that anybody wants to know my age, I am 39 years old, okay? I do not want to read about two people saying, I love you, but we can't be together. I love you, but we can't be together. I want, as a 39-year-old woman, okay, I want to read, don't get me wrong, I love enemies to lovers. Like, enemies to lovers is like my absolute favorite. Like, I love it.
It's good.
It is so good. And I like tension, and I like fighting like with each other, and maybe she tries to stab him a couple of times. Like, I love that. I love it. But I don't like, I felt like their relationship, everything else in the book was good. But I felt like the relationship was too teenager. And that's why I could not love it. And ultimately what made me like dislike it. And in the second book, I tried to read it. I couldn't get into it. And so I skipped to the end to see what happened. Because I was curious. But
I get that. I can agree with that. Yeah, I can agree with the relationship dynamic, but I think there's so much more in the book to focus on. I think like Violet and Xaden, yes, are, they're a huge focal point, but the other characters for me and the dragons and the military aspect of everything and just the way things are unfolding and what's happening, I'm just like, give me more. I want to know. I need to know what happens. What happens in the next chapter?
So books on my list, because I do love dragons, is a book called The Dragon King by Penelope Barsetti. And so in the first book, there's only one dragon, and they're not in like school or whatever, but it's really dark. And the guy who rides the dragon is also a necromancer, which I thought was like totally different. And I loved it because it wasn't like, there are fae in it. Like when you get later on in the series, like other people are introduced, like fae, and there's more dragons. But right now it's like humans and then the necromancer. And I play video games, and one of my main characters is a necromancer, and I love necromancers. And that's usually what I play when I do video games. But so for a dragon book, that one, to me,
is this it?
Yes. And I actually ordered the special edition, which should be here in January. And I'm super excited to get them. And they are so pretty. But and her books are shorter than Fourth Wing. Like they're a little bit, they're not as thick. But I love the Dragon King. So that's one of mine on, if you like dragons, that's one that I absolutely loved. And if you want something different, that's not just fae, werewolves, and vampires, it has a necromancer. Let's see, what other books do I have on my list? Another one that I did an ARC read for and ended up buying the special edition for it that I absolutely love by an indie author is What Lies Within Masks and Shadows by Nicolle. That book was amazing, and it kind of has a different element. It's a little bit dark. It's got some trauma in it that both the FMC and the MMC are kind of healing from. And I kind of like that. I like anything that has like something different in it. So I really love that one. And then another one, and this is one that I read recently, is Wish. The book is called Wish by Sara Flanagan. And it kind of takes like Genie in the Bottle, but you make it like a badass girl who like kills everybody or wants to kill everybody and is just like mean and lovable at the same time. And she can grant who's ever in possession of her little, I don't know what to call it. What are those called? The Genie in the Bottle, the little lamp thing.
The lamp?
The lamp, I guess.
The Genie in a Bottle, the lamp thing.
I'm trying to think of what, I thought I had a name for it, like looks like kind of like a teapot. Anyways, I don't think that that's what she's in, but
Magic lamp. That's all that's coming up on Google. It's like Genie.
Okay.
Magic lamp. Magic lamp.
Googled it.
Thank you.
Gravy boat.
But anyways, who's ever in possession of her magic lamp thing, she could grant 3 wishes for. And she is just like the female character is like, she's just such a badass, and I love it. And I love when they make the girls mean. I don't know why, but I'm like, yes, I want her to be stabbing everybody.
I like that because I feel like all of the Genie-esque books that I've read have been from the point of view of the people asking the genie for something. It's never been from the genie's point of view. So that's really cool.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
she takes the wishes, which is really cool. She takes the wishes that she's granting and she kind of like twists it to like her, like something that would kind of like benefit her. And she's been through a lot of trauma. And so that's kind of why, and she was like forced into being stuck this way by somebody. I hope I'm not getting my books twisted. Actually, I just thought about that. No, I'm pretty sure.
3 books
I was
also.
thinking about that. I was thinking about the aspect that she was forced into it, but I'm pretty sure that that's what I read. I'm pretty sure it's this book. I read too many books. Either way, it is one of my top reads, and I love it. I'm really excited for the next book. Okay, so Dragon King, What Lies? Okay, another thing that I got into this year was, and I've never even heard of this genre until this year, called Pitch Black. I mean, and it's like, it's dark, but there is a book that I absolutely loved called 24690 series. And the first book is 24690, and it's by A.A. Dark. And she is an amazing author and wrote some crazy, brilliant things. And so that's kind of been my new obsession. I've been trying to find more books that I want to read that are in that pitch black section. Let's see, my next one, Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider. That one was so good. And not that I'm bragging, but I read that before everybody started talking about it on Instagram. And I loved it. I knew it was going to be a good book, and then I started seeing it on Instagram all over the place. That one was really good. And another one, so I love books that can make me feel like deep emotions. Like those are the books that really stand out to me. And there's one book that I read this year, and I think it's the only one this year that's like, I was like bawling my eyes out reading this book. Like my husband's sleeping and I'm awake reading, and I'm trying not to wake him up with crying. But it was called Remember Us This Way by Sheridan Ann. I think I said her first name right. I absolutely love that book. I actually ended up buying it for my niece for Christmas because my niece likes to read too. But she reads more like regular romance, although she's asked me a few times about getting into like the fantasy and a little bit of the darker side of things because she's getting bored of like the billionaire romance genre.
Once you read one billionaire romance,
it's all the same. It really is. Because I went down that rabbit hole for a little bit too back in 2022. I don't know why I keep referring to 2022.
Really excited about 2012.
2022. I went down that rabbit hole a little bit, and I also did the Mafia for a little bit. And I don't know. I feel like once you read one of each, they're pretty much. I mean, no offense to anybody who loves it, but they're pretty much all the same. After a little bit.
I think you have to love that genre to be able to read like multiple books
in it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I still go back, like when I want to break from like fantasy, or if I'm in a slump, like sometimes I'll go back to one of those to like reset my mind. And then I'm like, okay, I need fantasy now.
I like that.
I'm sure I have tons. I know I have other books that like I absolutely love this year, but those are the first ones that came to my mind. Kate, what about you?
Alrighty, so I have a number of them. 2024 was a great reading year for me. While I didn't read as many books, the quality of books that I read was far superior to years previously, which was really refreshing. My first is my first 5-star read, not my first 5-star read of the year, but the first one that I have. It's a favorite. Vesselless by Cortney, Winn. This was so good. This was so good. It's on Kindle Unlimited for just a skosh longer. It might be getting taken off the end of this year. I don't remember, but it is. She started off as an indie author, and it's now with a publishing house, so she's going to republish soon. But yes, this book is so good. There's a main male character who's like a ghost, and the female main character is a badass fighting chick. Like, it has so many things that you want in it. It was really hard for me to put the book down when I needed to do things like chores and work and sleep. So good. Next, I'm going to try and do these in the order that I read them. Oh, no, I'm not, because I'm going to keep them in. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to keep them in a genre. Okay. Next is Tides of Deception as well. I loved this book, but I loved book 2 even more. Like, I'm not going to say that I liked it twice as much, but I liked it. Like, this is great. It's very good. There's Greek mythology, there's political intrigue, there's love triangle, arranged marriage. Like, there's so much in it, but it sets it up for an insane book 2 that is really good, and it's coming out in 2025. Tides of Deception by Caley Robison. So good. Next is The Befallen by Cambria Williams. This I picked up a little bit later in the year. I followed her since I began my Instagram, and I have just always loved this cover. It's such a gorgeous cover. And this is more of your hero's journey fantasy, if you're familiar with that. It's more of like an epic fantasy quest than it is. It's not really, I wouldn't say it's a romantasy. There's high stakes and just another really excellent page turner. I loved this one. And then we have The Rule of the Damned by Stephanie Storm. This is an urban fantasy. I think this might be the only urban fantasy that I read this year, because they're hard to come by. I don't see them as much as I thought that I would, but it follows 4 different characters from 4 different sorcerer families. There's rogues, undead, I'm going to forget the other ones, but they're all trying to solve this murder and some murders that are happening within their families. And it's kind of mafia-esque, but it's like fantasy as well, so it's super good. If you like mafia romance, this isn't super romancy, but it's kind of like, it kind of blends mafia and fantasy together really well. And there's a skosh of spice. But yeah, very, very good. And then I have Veiled Voyage, which I read this one, and I also read the sequel, Veiled War by Jennifer Mon. These are romantasy. This one takes place on a boat, hence voyage. The boat captain's name is Nash, and he's awesome. I love him so much. He's not really in book 2 as much, but apparently in book 3, he's all over the place, which is awesome because I love him so much. This follows the story of Alana, who has to run from her home country and get sold into the debt of her enemy country, and her trying to figure out how to get back home. There's shifters and all sorts of different like gods and magic and fighting, and it's just the Easter eggs that Jennifer hides throughout her books are insane. Like, highly recommend. And I'm gonna finish up with a couple of sci-fi reads that I read that I loved. There's Umbra, Sentient Stars by Amber Toro. Her sequel comes out early 2025. And I just finished re-listening to this one on audiobook because her audiobook just came out. And similar to what you were saying, Helen, about the games gods play, like it's just as good, almost better listening to the audiobook because it's like I kind of remember what happened, but now having someone else tell me what happened, it just, I don't know, like lets my mind go crazy even more because I'm not having to focus on the words. There is a mysterious signal coming from deep space, and it is fucking shit up. So good. And then finally is Fourth Portal by J.A. Merkel. This one is a multi-point of view, which I think that one's multi-point of view too. So, which I love. I'm a big sucker. If it's multiple point of views, sign me up. I'm a huge sucker for them. This one is humanity has gone to a new planet because Earth has died, and this planet is very dangerous. Like, it's very shifting. He described it as Dune, but I enjoyed this way more than Dune. Dune took me over a year to read because it was so freaking slow and boring, and I'm really sorry if I offend anyone by saying that. But if you liked Dune, then you'll really like this because this one moves. Just the characters are really interesting, and there's like different creatures that are trying to hunt them as they're going out trying to look for new resources to help their fellow humans on this insane planet that they found themselves on. So those were my favorite books of 2024.
And I will agree with Befallen for you because I really love that one too.
Oh,
and Vesselless, that one was amazing and so different in with the ghost thing. It was like the movie Ghost meets Casper meets, oh gosh, I can't think of the other movie that I thought of when I was reading it, but that one's really good. Vesselless and Tides of Deception with both of you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when you guys said those, I was like, I should have put those on my list too.
There's just too many books.
I know. They were good though.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us on our first episode of the Bookish Diaries. We're super stoked that you've joined us. We are really excited for a year full of talking about all things we love about books. And we're excited for you to join us in the upcoming episodes.
Yes.
Super excited.
If you join us for next episode, we are going to be talking about how we individually rate our books, how we decide when and when not to tag authors in the reviews that we post on Instagram, and how we learned to not finish books and DNFing, and how we each go about choosing how and when to do that. So we're very excited to share more with you next episode.
Yes.
Thank
you guys.
The Bookish Diaries.
Bye.
Bye.
Toodaloo.